The pain exploded through Lily Preston's abdomen with such force that she couldn't even scream, only gasp as her husband's boot connected with her swollen belly for the second time that evening in their small homestead outside Holbrook, Arizona. The year was 1881, and the August heat still clung to the desert air even as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold that seemed to mock the violence unfolding inside the weathered wooden walls. Marcus Preston had been drinking again, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey as he stood over her, his face twisted with a rage she had come to know too well over the past 3 years of their marriage. She was 5 months pregnant with what should have been their first child, a blessing she had prayed for since their wedding day, but Marcus had changed in recent months. The mine where he worked had closed, his gambling debts had mounted, and his anger had found its outlet in her flesh. "You worthless woman," he snarled, drawing his leg back for another kick. "Another mouth to feed when I can barely keep us alive now." Lily rolled to her side, trying to protect her unborn baby, tears streaming down her face as she felt a warm wetness spreading between her legs. Blood. She knew it was blood even before she looked down at her worn calico dress, now staining dark red. Terror gripped her heart as she realized something was terribly wrong. "The baby," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Marcus, please, the baby." But Marcus had already turned away, grabbing his hat and coat. "I'm going back to town. Clean yourself up before I get back." The door slammed behind him, leaving her alone on the floor of their tiny home, bleeding and afraid. Lily tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. The cramping in her abdomen had intensified, waves of pain that made her vision blur and her breath come in shallow gasps. She needed help. She needed a doctor. But the nearest doctor was in Holbrook, nearly 3 miles away, and she couldn't walk, couldn't even crawl to the door. She didn't know how long she lay there, drifting in and out of consciousness, before she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching. At first, she thought Marcus had returned, and fear made her heart race even faster. But then she heard a voice, unfamiliar and concerned, calling out, "Hello? Anyone home? Saw your lamp burning and thought I'd check if you folks needed any help fixing that fence post I saw down by the road." Lily tried to call out, but her voice came as barely a whisper. She heard boots on the wooden porch, then a knock at the door. "Madam, sir. Everything all right in there?" Using every ounce of strength she had left, Lily called out, "Help! Please help me!" The door opened and a tall figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the dying light outside. As he moved closer, she could make out the features of a man in his mid-20s, with dark hair beneath a worn Stetson and eyes that widened in shock as he took in the scene before him. "Good Lord," he breathed, dropping to his knees beside her. "Madam, what happened? Who did this to you?" Lily found herself looking into the most honest eyes she had ever seen, green as spring grass, filled with genuine concern and something else, something that looked like barely contained fury. "My husband," she managed to say. "The baby. Please, I need a doctor." The cowboy, whose name she didn't even know, didn't hesitate. "I'm going to pick you up now, madam. We're getting you to Doc Harrison in Holbrook right away." His name was Kieran Irwin. She would learn later. A ranch hand who had been riding back to the Circle K ranch where he worked when he noticed the broken fence post and decided to be neighborly. He lifted her as gently as if she were made of glass, cradling her against his chest as he carried her outside to where his horse, a sturdy bay gelding, waited patiently. "This is going to be rough, madam, but we don't have time to fetch a wagon. Can you hold on to me?" Lily nodded weakly as Kieran mounted his horse with her still in his arms, settling her carefully in front of him. One arm held the reins while the other kept her secure against him, and then they were moving, the horse breaking into a swift canter that jarred her injuries but couldn't be helped. The 3-mile journey to Holbrook felt both endless and instantaneous. Lily faded in and out of awareness, conscious only of the steady beat of Kieran's heart against her cheek, the warmth of his body shielding her from the cooling evening air, and his voice, low and soothing, talking to her the entire way. "Stay with me now. You're going to be fine. The baby's going to be fine. Doc Harrison is the best there is. Just a little further now. That's it. Just keep breathing. You're doing real good." She had never heard such kindness in a man's voice before, not directed at her. Marcus had been charming during their courtship, but there had always been an edge to him, a hardness that she had mistaken for strength. This stranger's voice held genuine compassion, and despite her pain and fear, she felt something shift inside her heart. Holbrook was a small town, barely more than a main street with a few branching roads, but to Lily, it looked like salvation as they thundered down the dusty road. Kieran pulled up in front of a neat white house with a sign hanging from the porch that read Dr. Samuel Harrison, physician and surgeon. "Doc," Kieran shouted, dismounting with Lily still in his arms. "Doc Harrison. Emergency." The door flew open and a middle-aged man with silver-streaked hair and spectacles appeared, taking in the situation with a practiced eye. "Bring her inside, quickly. Second door on the left." The next hours passed in a blur of pain and fear. Dr. Harrison examined her while Kieran waited outside the room, pacing the narrow hallway like an expectant father. The doctor's face was grave as he worked, and a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Henderson, who served as his nurse, held Lily's hand and murmured prayers. "You've had significant trauma to the abdomen," Dr. Harrison said, his voice gentle but honest. "There's bleeding and the baby is in distress. I'm going to do everything in my power to save both of you, but I need you to be strong, Mrs. Preston." "Can you do that for me?" Lily nodded, tears sliding down her temples as she lay on the examination table. She thought of her baby, the tiny life growing inside her that she already loved more than anything in the world. She thought of Marcus and his cruelty, and wondered how her life had come to this. And she thought of the cowboy in the hallway, a stranger who had shown her more care in the past hour than her own husband had in months. Dr. Harrison worked through the night, using every skill he possessed to stop the bleeding and stabilize both mother and child. It was near dawn when he finally emerged from the room, exhausted but with a small smile on his weathered face. Kieran jumped to his feet from where he had been sitting on a hard wooden chair. "How is she?" "The baby. She's going to live," the doctor said. "The baby as well, though it was touch and go for a while there. Another 20 minutes and we would have lost them both. You got her here just in time, young man." Kieran felt his knees go weak with relief. He had to brace himself against the wall, suddenly aware of how terrified he had been. "Can I see her?" Dr. Harrison studied him for a long moment. "You're not the husband, are you?" "No, sir. I'm just someone who found her and brought her here." "Then you're a hero," the doctor said firmly. "She's sleeping now, but you can sit with her if you'd like. I want to keep her here for at least a few days to monitor her condition. Mrs. Henderson will be staying to help nurse her." Kieran entered the room quietly, his hat in his hands. The early morning light filtered through the lace curtains, casting soft shadows across Lily's pale face. Someone had cleaned her up and dressed her in a plain cotton nightgown, and her brown hair had been braided and lay across one shoulder. She looked so young, so vulnerable, and Kieran felt anger rise in him again at the thought of any man raising a hand to her, much less his own wife. He pulled the chair close to the bed and sat down, not really understanding why he felt compelled to stay. He had done his duty as a decent human being. He could leave now, get back to the ranch before Mr. Kelly wondered where he had disappeared to. But something kept him in that chair, watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, grateful beyond measure that she was alive. It was mid-morning when Lily's eyes fluttered open. The room swam into focus slowly, and for a moment she was disoriented, unsure where she was. Then memory came flooding back, the pain, the blood, the desperate ride to town, and she gasped, her hand flying to her abdomen. "Easy now," a deep voice said, and she turned her head to see Kieran sitting beside her bed. "The doctor says you and the baby are going to be fine. You need to rest." "My baby," she whispered, tears of relief spilling over. "My baby is alive." "Yes, madam, thanks to you being strong." He leaned forward, his green eyes intense. "Madam, I hope you don't mind me asking, but what happened last night? That wasn't no accident." Lily looked away, shame flooding through her. "My husband. He had been drinking. He gets angry when he drinks." "Has he done this before?" The question was quiet, but Kieran's jaw was tight, and Lily could see the muscle jumping there as he clenched his teeth. "Not like this," she admitted. "He has hit me before, pushed me, but never when I was carrying. I thought maybe when I told him about the baby it would change things, make him happy, but it only made him worse." Kieran was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was controlled, but she could hear the fury beneath it. "Where is he now?" "I don't know. He left after, said he was going back to town." She looked at Kieran with frightened eyes. "He'll come looking for me. When he sobers up, he'll want me to come home." "Over my dead body," Kieran said flatly. "You're not going back to a man who would do this to you and his own child." "But I have nowhere else to go. No family, no money of my own. In the eyes of the law, I belong to him." Kieran stood and began pacing the small room, his mind working. "There has to be something we can do, some way to keep you safe." Before Lily could respond, raised voices came from the front of the house. She recognized Marcus's voice, loud and belligerent, demanding to see his wife. Terror seized her and she tried to sit up, ignoring the pain the movement caused. "He's here," she gasped. "Please don't let him take me." Kieran moved to the door, positioning himself between it and the bed. "I won't. You have my word." Dr. Harrison's voice rose in response to Marcus's demands, firm and unyielding. "Your wife is in no condition to be moved, Mr. Preston. She nearly died last night. Both she and the baby nearly died." "That's my concern, not yours. Now let me see her. I have a right to see my own wife." The door to Lily's room opened and Marcus pushed past Dr. Harrison, his face flushed with anger or perhaps embarrassment at being seen this way. He stopped short when he saw Kieran standing there, blocking his path to the bed. "Who the hell are you?" Marcus demanded. He was a stocky man, shorter than Kieran but broad-shouldered, with thinning brown hair and cold gray eyes. "I'm the man who saved your wife's life last night," Kieran said quietly. "After you tried to kill her and your unborn child." Marcus's face went red. "You don't know nothing about my business. Get out of my way." "No." It was a simple word but loaded with promise. Marcus took a step forward and Kieran didn't move, didn't flinch. The two men stood toe to toe, and despite Marcus's bulk, it was clear who would win if it came to blows. "Mr. Preston," Dr. Harrison said from the doorway, and now his voice was cold as winter ice. "I've sent for Sheriff Tate. He's very interested in hearing how your wife came to be so grievously injured." Marcus paled at that. "She fell. It was an accident. Tell them, Lily. Tell them you fell." From the bed, Lily's voice came, weak but clear. "No, no more lies. You kicked me, Marcus. You kicked me in the stomach while I was carrying your baby. You could have killed us both. You lying witch." Marcus started toward her, but Kieran's hand shot out, gripping his shoulder hard enough to make him wince. "That's far enough. You're done hurting her." Heavy footsteps sounded in the hallway and Sheriff Tate appeared, a tall man with a weathered face and a star pinned to his vest. He took in the scene with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Preston," he said, "I think you'd better come with me. We need to have a conversation." "On what charges?" Marcus blustered. "A man can't be arrested for disciplining his own wife." "Maybe not in some places," Sheriff Tate said. "But attempted murder is attempted murder, regardless of who the victim is. And assaulting a woman with child, trying to kill an unborn baby, that sits mighty poorly with me and with the good folks of this town." What followed was a tense standoff, but eventually Marcus was led away, still protesting his innocence. Dr. Harrison assured Lily that the sheriff would do everything in his power to see that Marcus faced consequences for his actions, though they all knew the law was not always on a woman's side in such matters. Kieran returned to the chair beside Lily's bed, and she looked at him with eyes full of gratitude and something else, something that made his heart beat faster. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "Stand up for me that way. You don't even know me." "Maybe not," Kieran admitted, "but I know enough. I know you're brave. I know you're a mother willing to fight for her baby. And I know that no woman deserves to be treated the way that man treated you." Over the following days, as Lily recovered under Dr. Harrison's care, Kieran visited every day. At first he told himself it was just to check on her welfare, to make sure she was healing properly. But the truth was harder to deny with each passing visit. He was drawn to her in a way he had never experienced before. Lily found herself watching the door, her heart lifting every time it opened to reveal Kieran's tall form. They would talk for hours, and she learned about his life, his work at the Circle K ranch, his dreams of maybe owning his own spread someday. He was 25 years old, had been working cattle since he was 15, and had a quiet strength about him that made her feel safe for the first time in years. Kieran learned that Lily was 22, that she had married Marcus when she was 19, a naive girl who thought she had found security and protection. Her parents had died of fever when she was 17, leaving her alone in the world, and Marcus had seemed like an answer to prayer. She had been so wrong. "I should have seen it," she told Kieran one afternoon as they sat together in the small garden behind the doctor's house. She was strong enough now to walk a little, and the fresh air did her good. "There were signs, even before we married. The way he would get angry over small things, the way he talked about other people, especially women, but I was so desperate not to be alone." "You can't blame yourself for his cruelty," Kieran said firmly. "That's on him, not you. What am I going to do now?" Lily asked, her hand resting protectively on her belly. "I have no money, no home. Marcus will get out of jail eventually. The sheriff says he might face charges, but even if he does, it won't be for long. And then what?" Kieran had been thinking about this question for days, turning it over in his mind during the long hours of ranch work. He knew what he wanted to do, what his heart was urging him to do, but he didn't want to take advantage of her vulnerable state. Still, time was running out. Dr. Harrison said she was well enough to be discharged in another day or two, and then where would she go? "Lily," he said, and it was the first time he had used her given name. She looked at him, her blue eyes wide and questioning. "I have a proposition for you, and I want you to hear me out before you answer." "All right," she said quietly. "The Circle K is a big spread, always needs help. Mr. Kelly's wife, Sarah, has been looking for someone to help with the house and the cooking. It doesn't pay much, but it comes with room and board, a little cabin on the property. You could work there, have a safe place for you and the baby. Be independent." "That's very kind," Lily said, "but I don't think any respectable ranch would hire a woman in my situation. Still married, carrying a baby, fleeing from my husband." Kieran took a deep breath. "That's why I'm proposing something else. Marry me." Lily stared at him, certain she had heard wrong. "What? Marry me," Kieran repeated, his green eyes steady on hers. "I know it sounds crazy. We barely know each other. But hear me out. If you're married to me, Marcus has no legal claim on you. You'd be protected. The baby would be protected. You'd have a name, a home, and safety." "But you don't love me," Lily whispered, her heart breaking a little even as hope flared. "And I don't love you, not yet anyway. That's no foundation for a marriage." "Maybe not," Kieran agreed. "But I respect you. I admire your strength. And I think, given time, we could build something real, something good. I'm not asking you to love me right away. I'm just asking you to let me help you. Let me give you and your baby a chance at a decent life." Lily felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Why would you do this? Tie yourself to a woman with another man's child. You could find someone else, someone without all this trouble." Kieran reached out and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. "I don't want someone else. From the moment I found you lying there, bleeding and brave, something changed in me. I can't explain it. Maybe it doesn't make sense. But I know that I want to be the man who keeps you safe. The man who helps you raise that baby. And maybe, if we're lucky, the man you could come to care for someday." Lily looked into his eyes and saw only sincerity there. No hidden cruelty, no calculation, just honest hope. She thought about the alternative, about trying to make it alone with a baby in a world that was hard on women in the best of circumstances. She thought about Marcus, who even now was sitting in a jail cell, and who would come for her the moment he was free. "Yes," she said softly. "Yes, I'll marry you." The wedding took place 2 days later in Dr. Harrison's parlor, with the doctor and his wife serving as witnesses. Sheriff Tate was there as well, having taken a personal interest in the case. Lily wore a simple blue dress that Mrs. Harrison had altered to fit her growing figure, and Kieran wore his Sunday best, his dark hair slicked back and his face freshly shaved. When they spoke their vows, Kieran's voice was steady and sure. Lily's trembled a bit, but she meant every word. She promised to honor him, to stand by him. And silently she vowed to try her very best to be a good wife to this man, who had shown her such unexpected kindness. The kiss that sealed their marriage was brief and chaste, but Lily felt warmth spread through her at the touch of Kieran's lips on hers. When they pulled apart, his eyes were soft, and he squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you," he whispered, so only she could hear, "for trusting me." They returned to the Circle K ranch that afternoon, riding together on Kieran's horse, this time with Lily sitting before him as his wife. The ranch was about 5 miles northwest of Holbrook, a sprawling property with good grazing land and a creek that ran year-round. The main house was a large adobe structure, and nearby were several smaller buildings, including the cabin that would be their home. Mr. Kelly was a man in his 50s, weathered and tough, but fair-minded. His wife Sarah was a plump, motherly woman who took one look at Lily and immediately took her under her wing. "You poor dear," she said, ushering Lily into the cabin that Kieran had cleaned and prepared. "Kieran told us a bit about your situation. You're safe here, don't you worry. And we're so glad to have another woman around. It gets lonely being the only female among all these rough cowboys." The cabin was small but clean, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, and a smaller bedroom with a real bed and a chest of drawers. Kieran had bought new linens with his own money, and there were even curtains at the windows. "I know it's not much," he said, looking almost nervous as Lily took it all in. "It's wonderful," she assured him. "Better than anything I could have hoped for." That night, their first as husband and wife, was awkward. Kieran insisted on sleeping on a bedroll on the floor, giving Lily the bed. She protested, saying it was his cabin and his bed, but he was immovable. "You're still healing," he said. "You need proper rest. I'm fine on the floor. Done it most of my life anyway. Lily lay in the darkness, listening to his breathing, and felt a confusing mix of relief and disappointment. He was being so respectful, so careful not to push her, but part of her wished he would hold her, make her feel less alone. "Kieran," she called softly into the darkness. "Yes, thank you for everything." "You don't need to keep thanking me, Lily. We're partners now. We take care of each other." The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Kieran worked long days on the ranch, riding out before dawn and often not returning until after sunset. Lily, once she was fully recovered, began helping Sarah with the household tasks, cooking and cleaning and learning the ways of ranch life. She proved to be a quick learner and a hard worker, and Sarah often praised her to Mr. Kelly. In the evenings, Kieran and Lily would sit together in their cabin, talking about their days. Slowly, carefully, they were building a friendship. Kieran would tell her stories about the cattle drives he had been on, the wild horses he had helped break, the beauty of the desert sunset from the back of a good horse. Lily would share her dreams for the baby, the little clothes she was sewing, her hopes for the future. One evening, about a month after their marriage, Lily was sitting in the rocking chair Kieran had bought for her, working on a tiny blanket. Kieran sat nearby, mending a piece of tack. The silence between them was comfortable now, companionable. "I felt the baby move today," Lily said suddenly. "Really move, I mean, not just flutters, but an actual kick." Kieran looked up, a smile spreading across his face. "Yeah, that's good, right? Means the baby's strong." "Very good," Lily agreed. She hesitated, then said, "Would you like to feel?" Kieran's hand stilled on the leather he was working. "I wouldn't want to intrude." "You're not intruding. You're my husband. And you saved this baby's life. I think you have a right to feel it move." Slowly, Kieran set aside his work and moved to kneel beside the rocking chair. Lily took his hand, large and calloused from hard work, and placed it gently on her rounded belly. They waited in silence for a moment, and then it came, a small but definite thump against Kieran's palm. His eyes went wide with wonder. "That's amazing," he breathed. "That's a whole person in there." "Getting bigger every day," Lily said with a soft laugh. She looked down at his dark head bent toward her belly, his hands so gentle on her body, and felt her heart swell with an emotion she was almost afraid to name. When Kieran looked up at her, their faces were very close. She could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, the slight stubble on his jaw. She could smell the clean scent of soap and leather and something uniquely him. "Lily," he said, his voice rough, "can I kiss you? I mean, really kiss you?" Instead of answering, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss started gentle but quickly deepened as weeks of restrained attraction finally found release. Kieran's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb stroking her cheek, while his other hand remained on her belly, protective and possessive. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I think I'm falling in love with you," Lily whispered, almost afraid to say it out loud. "Thank God," Kieran said, resting his forehead against hers. "Because I've been in love with you since that first night. I just didn't want to push you, didn't want you to feel obligated." "You saved my life," Lily said, framing his face with her hands. "You gave me and my baby a future. But that's not why I'm falling in love with you. I'm falling in love with you because you're good and kind and patient, because you make me laugh, because you make me feel safe and cherished. Because when I look at you, I see the man I want to spend the rest of my life with." That night, Kieran didn't sleep on the floor. He held Lily in the bed, her back against his chest, his arm draped protectively over her swollen belly. They didn't do anything more than hold each other, but it was enough. It was everything. The baby came in early December, a cold night when the stars were bright and sharp in the desert sky. Lily's labor started in the evening, and Kieran immediately rode to fetch Dr. Harrison. Sarah came to stay with Lily, holding her hand and encouraging her through the contractions. "You're doing wonderful, dear," Sarah said. "Just breathe through it. The doctor will be here soon." But the baby had other plans. By the time Dr. Harrison arrived with Kieran riding hard behind him, Lily was fully in the throes of labor. Kieran paced outside the cabin, unable to stay still, his heart in his throat every time he heard Lily cry out in pain. It was near midnight when he finally heard a different sound, the thin wail of a newborn. He stopped pacing, his whole body tense, waiting. It felt like hours, but was probably only minutes before Dr. Harrison emerged, a tired but satisfied smile on his face. "You have a daughter," he said. "A beautiful, healthy baby girl, and Lily came through it like a champion." Kieran felt his knees go weak with relief. "Can I see them?" "Give Sarah a few more minutes to get them cleaned up and settled, then yes." When Kieran finally entered the cabin, he found Lily propped up in bed, looking exhausted but radiant. In her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in the blanket she had been sewing. The baby had a shock of dark hair, and when she opened her eyes, they were a deep blue. "Come meet your daughter," Lily said softly, and Kieran realized she meant it. Not Marcus's daughter. His. The baby he would raise and love as his own. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, looking down at the tiny face. "She's perfect," he breathed. "I was thinking," Lily said, "if you agree, I'd like to name her Grace. Because finding you, being saved by you, having this chance at a new life, that was all grace." Kieran felt tears burn his eyes. He leaned down and kissed Lily's forehead, then placed the gentlest of kisses on baby Grace's head. "Grace Irwin," he said. "It's perfect." In the days and weeks that followed, they settled into life as a family. Kieran was a natural with the baby, getting up in the night to change her and bring her to Lily for feeding, walking her when she was fussy, singing to her in his deep, slightly off-key voice. Watching him with Grace made Lily fall even more deeply in love with him. The legal issues with Marcus were resolved in early spring. He had been sentenced to 6 months in jail for assault, a longer sentence than most expected, but Sheriff Tate had been persuasive with the judge. When Marcus was released, he left Arizona Territory entirely, heading to California, and they never heard from him again. Lily filed for and was granted an annulment based on his violence and abandonment, though by then it was a mere formality. She was Lily Irwin in every way that mattered. As Grace grew, she brought joy to everyone at the Circle K. Sarah doted on her like a grandmother, and even tough old Mr. Kelly could be seen making silly faces to get her to smile. But it was Kieran she loved best, reaching for him with chubby hands whenever he came home, crying when he had to leave. "That's your daddy," Lily would tell her, and it was true in every way that counted. When Grace was 8 months old, Lily realized she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was welcomed with joy and excitement. Kieran could barely contain his happiness. "Our baby," he kept saying, his hand on her still flat belly. "You and me making a life together." Their son was born the following spring, in April when the desert was coming alive with wildflowers. They named him Thomas, after Kieran's father, and he came into the world squalling and robust, with his father's green eyes and his mother's delicate features. Grace was fascinated by her baby brother, wanting to help with everything. At barely a year and a half old, she would pat his head gently and try to share her toys with him. Watching his children together, Kieran felt a completeness he had never known was possible. It was around this time that Mr. Kelly called Kieran into his office. The old rancher looked serious, and Kieran worried that something was wrong. "Sit down, son," Mr. Kelly said, and Kieran complied, his hat in his hands. "I've been watching you these past couple of years. Watched you with your family, watched how hard you work, how much you care about this place. I appreciate the opportunity you've given me, sir, Kieran said. Well, here's the thing. I'm getting old. Sarah and we never had children of our own. This ranch has been our life, but we're not going to live forever. We've been talking, and we'd like to offer you a partnership. 20% of the Circle K, with the understanding that when we pass, the rest will come to you and Lily. Kieran stared at him, unable to believe what he was hearing. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Mr. Kelly said with a rare smile. You've earned it, you and that good woman of yours. We'd be honored to have you as full partners in this operation. When Kieran told Lily the news that evening, she threw her arms around him and wept with joy. Our children will have security, she said. A real future. Oh, Kieran, how did we get so lucky? I'm the lucky one, Kieran said, holding her tight. The day I found you was the day my real life began. The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Grace grew into a bright, spirited girl who could ride almost as soon as she could walk. Thomas was more quiet and thoughtful, but no less loved. When Grace was 4 and Thomas was 2, Lily gave birth to twin boys, Matthew and Michael, who kept everyone on their toes with their mischief and energy. The Circle K prospered under Kieran's management. He had a good head for business and a way with cattle and horses that was almost uncanny. The ranch expanded, hired more hands, and became known throughout the territory as one of the finest operations around. But for all their success, it was the quiet moments that Kieran treasured most. Evening on the porch with Lily, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink while their children played in the yard. Sunday mornings when the whole family would ride into Holbrook for church, sitting together in the pew like the respectable family they had become. Nights when he would hold Lily in his arms, marveling that this beautiful, strong woman was his wife. You ever regret it? Lily asked him one night, many years after that first desperate ride to the doctor. Taking on someone else's troubles, marrying a woman who came with so much baggage, Kieran pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. Not for a single second. You and Grace and the boys, you're everything to me. I wouldn't change a moment of it. Even that first night, when I was broken and bleeding. Especially that first night, Kieran said firmly. Because that was the night that brought you into my life. That was the night I found my purpose. I was meant to find you, Lily. Meant to save you. Meant to love you. I believe that with everything in me. Lily turned in his arms to face him, her blue eyes shining in the lamplight. I love you, Kieran Irwin, more than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone. I love you too, Lily Irwin. Now and always. When Mr. Kelly and Sarah passed away within months of each other, several years later, their deaths were peaceful and they left this world knowing the ranch they had built was in good hands. True to their word, they left the Circle K entirely to Kieran and Lily, who continued to run it with the same care and dedication. Grace grew into a beautiful young woman who eventually married a good man, a school teacher from back east who fell in love with both her and the wild beauty of Arizona. Thomas took to ranching like his father, becoming Kieran's right-hand man, and eventually running much of the day-to-day operations himself. The twins, Matthew and Michael, were different as night and day, one becoming a lawyer and the other a horse trainer, but both remained close to their parents and the ranch. Through it all, Kieran and Lily's love only deepened. The young cowboy who had saved a desperate woman's life and the brave mother who had survived the unthinkable had built something beautiful together. They had created a family, a legacy, and a love story that would be told for generations. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Kieran took Lily riding out to the place where he had first brought her to the Circle K, all those years ago. They sat together on a blanket, watching the sunset, his arm around her shoulders. I was just thinking, Lily said, leaning into him, about how different my life could have been. If you hadn't come along that night, if you hadn't been the kind of man who would stop to help a stranger. I was just thinking, Kieran countered, about how empty my life would have been if I hadn't found you. You gave me purpose, Lily. You gave me a family. You gave me everything. We gave each other everything, Lily corrected. She looked up at him, her face still beautiful despite the years, her eyes still bright with love. We saved each other. Kieran couldn't argue with that. He kissed her as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, and thanked God for the day a broken fence post had led him to the love of his life. They sat together long after the stars came out, talking about their children and grandchildren, about the ranch and its future, about all the blessings they had been given. The desert night was cool and clear, and somewhere in the distance a coyote howled. What do you think our great-grandchildren will know about us? Lily wondered aloud. I hope they know we loved each other, Kieran said. That we faced hard times and came through them together, that we built something worth passing down, and that it all started with an act of kindness and grew into something neither of us could have imagined. That's a good legacy, Lily agreed. They rode back to the ranch house as the moon rose high and bright, lighting their path home. The house was dark except for a lamp burning in the window, left there by Thomas, who knew his parents' habit of evening rides. It was a welcoming sight, a symbol of the life they had built together. Inside, they prepared for bed with the comfortable ease of long marriage. Kieran helped Lily with the buttons on the back of her dress that her fingers, stiff with age, had trouble reaching. She helped him pull off his boots, a ritual they had shared for decades. In bed, they lay facing each other, hands clasped between them. I would do it all again, Lily whispered into the darkness. Every moment of pain, every hardship, everything, if it meant ending up here with you. So would I, Kieran said, 1,000 times over. They fell asleep that way, hands linked, hearts intertwined, two souls who had found each other in the darkest of times and had built a lifetime of light together. Outside, the desert wind whispered through the mesquite trees, and the stars wheeled overhead, silent witnesses to a love story that had begun with an act of desperate courage and had become something eternal. Years later, when they were both very old, their children and grandchildren would gather around to hear the story of how their family began. Grace, gray-haired now with grandchildren of her own, would tell it best, having heard it so many times from both her parents. She would tell them about the brave young woman who had survived terrible cruelty and found the strength to protect her unborn child. She would tell them about the cowboy with a good heart who had stopped to help a stranger and had found his destiny. She would tell them about the desperate ride through the desert night, about the doctor who had saved 2 lives, about the marriage that had started as a practical solution and had become the greatest love story their family had ever known. And at the end, she would always say, "My father used to tell me that he was the luckiest man alive because one broken fence post had led him to my mother. And my mother would laugh and say she was the lucky one because God had sent her an angel when she needed one most." But I think they were both right. They were lucky to have found each other, and we are all lucky to have come from that love. The Circle K Ranch continued to thrive for generations, always in the hands of Kieran and Lily's descendants. The original cabin where they had started their married life was preserved and became a place of pilgrimage for family members, a reminder of humble beginnings and the power of love to transform lives. Kieran Irwin and Lily Preston. Irwin lived long, full lives surrounded by the family they had created. When Kieran passed away at the age of 78, Lily held his hand and whispered that she would see him soon. True to her word, she followed him just 3 months later, dying peacefully in her sleep with a smile on her face. They were buried together on a hill overlooking the Circle K, beneath a large oak tree that Kieran had planted the year Thomas was born. Their headstone was simple but perfect, reading Kieran and Lily Irwin, beloved parents and grandparents, together forever. And in the oral history of the family, in the stories told and retold around dinner tables and at family gatherings, their love story lived on. It became a legend, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope could be found. That kindness could change everything. That love could heal the deepest wounds and build the strongest foundations. The Wild West was a harsh and unforgiving place, but it was also a place where miracles could happen, where a desperate woman could be saved, where a good man could become a hero, where two broken people could come together and create something whole and beautiful and lasting. And that, in the end, was the true legacy of Kieran and Lily Irwin, not just the successful ranch or the large family, but the proof that love, real love, could conquer anything.